Um, I've always been a big fan of true crime, and I grew up. I think the first British gangster film I saw was Scarface, and I remember someone saying to me at the time, "You got to see Scarface." So I saw Scarface, and I was going around telling everyone how great Scarface was, and then someone says, "Have you seen The Goodfather?" The Goodfather, The Godfather, and I went no, and by then there was three of them, so they said get all three, right? And then it was like, have you seen Goodfellas? Have you seen Casino? Have you seen, um, you know, or, you know, Tarantino, Reservoir Dogs? So all these films I kind of got into, and just became a sort of fan of the genre really. And then at the time I was involved in putting on large-scale dance music events, and then when I come out of that, when I was 30, and then I kind of got involved in this crazy sort of movie business. I did a film called Rise of the Foot Soldier, and that was, probably one of the best British gangster films over the last 10 years. And the idea of that was, Football Factory meets Goodfellas. That was kind of the pitch for it, really. And we made that, and it done very well. And then just after that film, I'd say probably 2009, I started looking at other films that we could potentially make from the crime genre that hadn't been done. And what always interested me was the fact that nobody had ever gone back to, the birth of organised crime in England. There's a famous TV show at the moment called Peaky Blinders, which is obviously about a Birmingham firm of villains that, went around racetracks and, extorted people and made money and all that sort of stuff. And, we got to the point where, I was thinking, that's great, and there's always been organised crime in England, but the organised crime that was in England was mainly gangs and people stealing stuff. It wasn't really organised. So you'd have a gang in Birmingham, a gang in London, a gang in maybe Southampton, a gang in Scotland. So it was just gangs scattered up throughout the country. But Jack Spot and Billy Hill were kind of, if you like, the products of the environment. After the war or during the war, they kind of, they had no money. They were Jewish immigrants. They were in this kind of weird space where they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. And the fact that they actually seized the opportunity, they actually, went out and, started to organise things properly. They had the Spielers, they had the gambling dens, they had the prostitution. They had pretty much everything. They had, protection rackets. I mean, they did everything. But Jack was obviously the guy who was the founder. And then he took Billy under his wing, which was a big mistake at the time. And then obviously Billy stepped into his shoes and then he went out. But it's a little bit like business, it's cyclical. So, one thing's in and then they're out and then there's another one in and then they go out. And I thought this is a great story on how someone can, go there and then go there and then somebody else can go there and then some other people come in. So this film really, it kind of spans 3 decades. It's from like the late 30s through the 40s, through the 50s, and then into the 60s. And then obviously Jack's going up, then it's Billy, and then it's the Krays. And Billy was the only one who actually looked at his watch and said, it's time to go now. I think that was, he's probably the only villain in history that ever got out without going to jail for a long period of time, getting murdered, and keeping all his money intact. So. Well, I think there's a few reasons. I think the first reason is nobody, I mean, I've been around London for most of my life, and I know lots of different people. And I think when you go, when I was sort of 16, 17, I was obsessed with the Krays, with the Richardsons, with organised crime. So I read a lot of books, and I got into all of that stuff. And then as I then actually got older, and because I was running clubs, you come across these people, and you get to meet these people, and then you get to meet the Krays, the Richardsons, this guy, that guy, Freddie Foreman, Frankie Fraser, all these characters, you meet them, and they've all got the stories about the old days. And I was just thinking, there's never been a gangster film of all gangster films. Once Upon a Time in America, you can argue is probably the best American gangster film ever made, right? And for me, it was sort of like, I want to make a British gangster. And we did Rise of the Foot Soldier, which is a great British gangster film, and it ticked all the boxes and it was a success. But I think when you look at this film, nobody's ever done this before. And I think the reason they haven't done it before is maybe they haven't got access to the material, maybe they don't know the people, maybe, I know there have been scripts written, and I know there's been stories about Billy Hill, stories about Jack Spot, stories about Sabinis, sort of, you know, Freddie Foreman. All of these people have had scripts written, and they've all been trying to make the films. And I don't know why they haven't been made, but maybe, you know, they're not meant to make theirs and we're meant to make ours. Maybe that's what it is. I suppose it's. I suppose you could say I'm persistent. I'm irritating, and I don't give up. So it was that thing where, you know, I knew it was a good idea when I started looking into it, but it's taking the idea to a script and then making sure you get all the elements of the script, make sure the story's right. It originally was Billy Hill's story, and it was all about Billy Hill. And then for whatever reason, when we got Simon on board, Simon was like, Jack's a more interesting character. It's all going to be about Jack. But Billy's obviously, you know, the one that actually is the better gangster. He's the one that obviously has the better journey, and he learns from what Jack does wrong, and then he becomes the better gangster. So really, Billy's the only gangster probably in the world that's ever got out of the business without doing a long period in jail. You know, he never got killed. You know, and he retired with all his money. So he went off and had a nice life, whereas Jack died as a penniless greengrocer in North London, and his wife left him, you know, so he was a broken man. But I think, I don't know why Simon made that choice, but he did. So the reason Jack has become the guy that has the sort of journey, but then obviously loses it all, he just felt that was, audiences would relate more to that. For me, it was always a two-hander. It was always about Billy and Jack Spot. And that doesn't really matter if Billy had started the film off and then Jack comes in, or whether Jack starts the film and Billy comes in. As it is now, Jack starts it off and then Billy comes in. But either way would have worked, I think. Well, it's cyclical. What I love about this script and what Simon's done with it is Jack starts off on his ascent. He gets to the top, and then when he gets to the top, he doesn't actually realise, you know, to stay at the top of anything, you have to treat people right and look after people, and he doesn't, and he just goes, it's all me, I'm really fucking smart, you're really dumb, I'm taking more money, you know, and he just become this horrible person that just didn't care about anybody other than himself. And I think, you know, when he meets Rita, that's kind of, as he's going, he's declining, he's in decline, people are leaving him, Billy's coming up, and I think, in essence, he's looking at Billy saying, this is wrong, you should, you know, I brought you into this, you should be looking after me. And then obviously when Rita says I'm pregnant, I think he then goes from this character that, you know, he doesn't want to let go, but he's starting to think, actually, I wouldn't mind having a wife and kids, actually, I don't know if I want this anymore. And I think really, if you looked down into the character, he's a bully, basically. And I think he's a bully that just cares about himself. And I think when you look at Billy, he's a lot more astute, and he's a lot more watching what Jack does, seeing what he's doing wrong, sees that he's becoming weak, and that's when he sort of steps in and takes over. And then towards the end, when the Krays come in, it's like he has that flashback when he met me, and I say, Billy, you know, I want yes men, I don't want this, I don't want that. So then he's like, these guys are offering it, and he knows what's going to happen. And obviously the Krays are a lot more violent. I mean, they just went in the pub and shot someone in the face. That's why they got caught, because they ramped the violence up even more. So all it was doing was just become more and more violent. And Billy probably looked at it and thought, well, if I stay in this game, I'm going to end up like Jack. And he probably went, this is the time for me to check out. So in essence, I think Billy was a smart one. You know, if Jack had, you know, treated people better, and he hadn't been so greedy, and he had, you know, but hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? No, I like, what I like about Simon is attention to detail. And when I met him, he said, look, he said, I love the script and I want to direct it. But he said, you know, I want to have a go at rewriting it, because I think there's more to be mined out of this. And I think I want to set it up slightly differently. As I said, he made Jack the guy to start rather than Billy. And there was things that he added in that weren't in the original script. So he'd obviously done his own research, and he'd obviously come up with what he thought were the important beats are. and he did it on spec, i.e. he said, I'll go and have a go, I'll give it to you, if you don't like it, fine, if you do like it, we'll have a conversation. And as it happens, we loved it. And you know, when we got chatting, he came highly recommended, and I'd never worked with Simon. I didn't know his work. I watched obviously some of his films, and what I liked about what he did was there were strong performances, there was a lot of tension, there was, you know, things that made you feel uncomfortable. It was violent, and I just thought, well, actually, taking what he's done in the horror world and bringing it into this, we end up with a well-acted gangster drama, which is horrific. And the thing is, you know, there's nothing beautiful about violence, and in this, there's people getting cut, stabbed, and you know, if you see somebody hit someone and it knocks them out, or you see someone shoot someone and they're dead, you know, it's not pleasant. But you know, you have in this film, you have, for me, the scenes that I've seen him shoot so far, especially the violent scenes when the gangs clash, you know, it's like having 20 gladiators in a ring, and just going, here's a load of weapons, just smash, you know, just try and maim and kill each other, you know, for 10 minutes, until nobody's left standing. And I think that's, if you actually see a real street fight, if you actually see real violence, that's what it's like. It's not bang, they're unconscious, bang, they're dead. And it, you know, there is actually, and the fact that it carries on and carries on and carries on. So yeah, for me, that's what attracted me to Simon. And then when he actually turned around, and when we were on set, I remember the first day being on set with him and watching him work and thinking, this guy's kind of got this OCD quality where everything has to be right, and everybody has to say it at the right time, and they have to say it the right way, and everyone has to look in the, yeah, and there's all these little moments that he looks for. And I think when you're on the other side of the camera as an actor, you actually want someone to be saying to you in your ear, when you do that, it's actually more interesting if you walk away on that beat, or when you're looking at him, you know, pick something up, or when, you know, but just, I mean, things that you wouldn't even think of, and then you kind of go, okay, I'll give it a go, and you do it, and then you think, and then when you watch it back on the monitor, you think it's actually made it more interesting. And you know, there's things where he says, you know, when you're delivering that line, there's no rush to say the other line, you know, just take your time. And there's just little bits. It's like he's fine tuning everybody, and he knows, he's sort of editing in his head as well, which there's a lot of directors that I've worked with that are good and competent, but they're not that attention to detail, and they don't really get out of the actors and say, this is what I want you to do, this is what the scene's about, this is what you're thinking, this is what you're thinking. And you know, we did a rehearsal process where we spent a lot of time going over the scenes, and you know, we hung out with each other. Yeah, we got to know the actors who were playing their wives or their mates or their enemies, so that we had a little bit of a relationship with them. So when we come on the set, we knew what the scenes were about, we knew what we were doing, we knew we didn't like him, we knew we liked her. So it did actually give everybody something a little, and I've never done that on a film before. And for me, I've learnt a lot from Simon, the way he works, that I think is invaluable to when you're making a film, to get all the people to come on set confident and knowing what they're doing. And you know, you can tell people on the set what to do, but it's actually better if they turn up knowing what they're doing, rather than him having to spend 20 minutes talking to them about it, you know. What was interesting about the female characters in the film were, you know, with this film, we've taken a lot of time over making sure we get the costumes right, the locations right, the actors right, you know, and the characters right and the script right. You know, it's been a process over several years. It's not just happened overnight. And you know, one of the comments was, you know, we had a couple of comments about, you know, the female characters, yeah, need to be different in this film, because, you know, I think when you think about it, you know, when you've got the backdrop of the war, and you've got, you know, Gypsy was, you know, obviously, you know, not from England. Rita was not from England. Aggie was, right? So you've got this kind of well-to-do, nice girl in Aggie that ends up going out of a villain that the mum and dad don't approve of. So obviously, that's quite an interesting dynamic, and it's happened loads of times. You know, everybody will know someone who's been with somebody, and they go, "What's she doing with him?" You know, and then, you know, obviously, you know, Gypsy's obviously here, probably illegally working in a whorehouse, you know, and you know, Billy meets her and falls in love. So again, it's sort of, you know, and then she ends up becoming part of the gang, right? She's doing getaway driving, you know, she's fronting up Jack, you know, she's like a fella really. But what's interesting is if you were working in a brothel at that time, you would have had the pimp knocking you about, you would have had people treat you badly. So, you know, she's got to be strong, right? And then when you look at, and then the fact that Aggie's still in the background and she's still kind of friends with Billy and she's still sort of involved, that to me is also interesting. And then obviously you've got Rita, who's an Irish immigrant, and she's here, and you know, she's in that sort of weird space where, you know, she ends up reading Jack's palm, and then they end up sort of, you know, getting together and then getting married. And I think she's Jack's sort of way out of this world, and you know, he wants her to change him and lets her change him. And she's the only one who really tells him what to do, which is also interesting. And then later on, when, you know, you get to that point where everything's gone wrong, we've lost everything, but Darky Mully goes, here's something for you, right? And then we're like, thank God, you know, we're back. And then we're out celebrating, and then we're going back home at like 11 o'clock at night after we've been out for dinner. And then these 12 fellas just jump on us and beat us up. She's 8 months pregnant. She's getting it round her face with crowbars, punch in the face, punch in the stomach, you know, and the fact that she actually gets up, and I'm getting it from all these fellas, and then she's there like trying to have it with them, you know, and she's not a fighter, but she's feisty and she's Irish. So for me, you know, I think any woman, it doesn't matter whether you're a fighter or not, if any woman saw their husband getting beaten up by a load of fellas, they would, and the fact that she actually risked dying, really, because she's pregnant, you know, that to me is like the ultimate sacrifice. So I think people, when they watch this film, there will be moments when they won't want to watch the screen because they'll be like, fucking hell, that's a little bit too, you know, that's too much, right? Which is great, because that's what we want to show. You know, this isn't fun. This is real. This is what happened, you know. So, but then there's some funny moments. There's some, you know, emotional moments. But then, you know, I think a lot of the women will like the film, partly because of the period. I mean, every woman I know likes Peaky Blinders, right? Every woman I know likes Legend with Tom Hardy, you know. So there's no reason why they won't like it. It's because I think that you've kind of got three completely different I mean, there's more than three female characters in the film, but the three main characters, I think every member of the audience will relate with one of those characters in some way. And so, you know, we've got a sort of bit of girl power in the film. Well, I'll tell you what happened. When we started off doing this film, we wanted to aim for the stars. You know, we thought, you know, let's get some big movie stars in roles. Let's really cast it up. Let's do this. Let's do that. And unfortunately, when we went out and we tried to do that, we had people attached to the film early on that were great. You know, Eddie Marzan was going to play Jack. George McKay was going to play Billy. You know, we had these amazing actors lined up. And then what we had is, obviously, because they're amazing actors, they're always working. So to try and schedule the film around their availability, it became a nightmare. We're going to do it there, we'll wait for him. We'll do this here, we'll wait for them. And then it just kept moving and moving and moving. And it got to the point where some of the people that had invested said, look, you know, we've been waiting for this for a long time now. When's it going to happen? And we just went, do you know what? We could be sitting here in 6 months and be in the same position. Let's just go for it. And when I first developed this film, I said, wouldn't it be interesting if you looked at a time span of 20 years and you went, let's get the best, you know, whether they're hooligan films, gangster films, crime films, whatever, let's get the best films, you know, in that era, those 2 decades, and let's handpick the people that people liked, you know. So in Layer Cake, a lot of people like Jamie Foreman as a Duke, you know, in Rise of the Foot Soldier, a lot of people like me as Tony Tucker. In Football Factory, a lot of people like Roland Manukian and Zebedee. You know, The Business, everyone liked Jeff Bell as Sam. So you had these people that everyone went, oh, you know, weren't Jeff Bell good in that? Weren't Roland Manukian good in that? Weren't he good? You know, so my original idea was to literally get the best actors out of those films, put them in this. If it's a gangster film of all gangster films, you have all the best people from those films that are in there so that the fans like it, but then also the fans, the non-fans of this genre will watch it and it'll be real. That was kind of what happened early on. We went, you know, off-piste a little bit and tried to make it a little bit different. And I think it was, I suppose before Simon got involved, it was more of a gangster drama rather than a crime epic. And this now an epic crime film. Yeah, the female characters are bigger. You know, the the roles are, you know, the way it's been written. The thing is, right, all these people were real people, right, and they've all got real stories, and you know that we told those real stories. So I think what it does is, I'm just hoping it doesn't create 30 spin-off films where there's, you know, like the Essex Boys. There's been like 30 Essex Boys film. You know, we did the first one, Rise of the Foot Soldier, but I'm hoping that we don't have like 40 period crime films now.